Tom Salemi. We're here at the conclusion of OIS at AAO, and we're streaming this out live on Twitter, so I hope, folks, if you weren't here today, you should be here next year because it was a great day. We're going to give you a quick highlight of it today, but we'll have some content up on the OIS.net website as well. But let's actually talk about yesterday to start. Hard to believe we've been at this for a day and a half. We had OISX last night. Gentlemen, have a good time last night celebrating 10 years of working together?
It was great. This was the first big party we had. I think about 500 people. We always have a VIP dinner, but last night was very special. The awards, all the friends. We made a lot of friendships over 10 years.
And I liked the way it flowed, you know, that it was not too formal, and it had the tone of celebration.
Yeah, I think it was great to have the awards that really were able to recognize people that have worked with the meeting for many years, and it was great. So I blacked out halfway through the meeting. It was having so much fun, but it was good.
That's from laughing at Jim Mazo's Godfather impersonation. That was a great opening to it. I think it did set a jovial tone. But then we actually had to come back to work this morning, and you created a full day agenda, and I want to hit upon some highlights of it. Let's start at the beginning. Emmett, you gave your chairman's report. A lot of interesting data in that. I think you had to double up on some slides because there's so much going on. Give us a quick overview of the year in ophthalmology.
Well, I can barely do it in 15 minutes. I don't think I can do it in a minute. But lots of interesting stuff going on in the space. If I were to pick a couple very high-level highlights, we're seeing more money come into it. And as an investor, that's sort of the core, the engine, the gasoline that drives everything. And we were up to over $700 million invested over the last year into ophthalmology, specifically on the venture side. So that's fantastic. We're seeing continued development of mature spaces, AMD and DME, and the emergence of new spaces, myopia, presbyopia. The FDA looks like it's reorganizing both on the drug and the device side and trying to streamline, and this was a banner year for them as we made that point. So they're some of the very high-level things that I mentioned, but my colleagues may remember other things I mentioned that I can't remember right now.
Well, I do want to drill on the venture capital dollars going in, since we've got three esteemed venture capitalists here. Does that feel right to you? Do you see a lot more money chasing deals that you're hearing about? Does it seem like there's more interest in this space?
It does. You know, it makes sense to me in that there's growth and expansion of innovation in our space. And it's working, you know, I think it's one of the reasons that the OIS format has thrived, is bringing the constituents together that are required to team up in innovation. And if you look at, you know, one of the things that excited me today was the range of companies that we have presenting now, and the quality of the programs are really high. And it just reinforces to me how much of a pipeline that's being built, you know, in the private sector as well as the public sector in our field. And guess what? Capital has to support that. And so if the activity is honestly increasing, which it is, and maybe we've had a small impact, you know, in that area, capital has to be there.
Gil,
and I think on that as we talk about at the meetings, the innovation cycle of companies moving from startup all the way around to being globally commercial, we've seen so many companies move through that. Many of them are public companies, Aerie, Glaukos, et cetera. So I think that's more incentive for people to invest earlier on in all of the ophthalmic sectors, device, pharma, et cetera, because we really have very good track records of success.
And I want to discuss the breadth of all the presenting companies, but let's focus right now on your AI panel. You had a robotics company up there. You had other technologies up there that are moving into ophthalmology. Give us just a quick overview of that discussion, and I think it does speak to all the new technologies coming into ophthalmology.
Yeah, it was really fun because as we often do here at OIS, we try to see new markets that are coming up over the horizon kind of before others see them, and then socialize it with our big network here. And so AI really didn't exist when we did our first digital ophthalmology session in 2012 at AAO. It was very hard to find any companies that were really active in the area. And now we have a whole explosion in the area. So I think it was exciting to see different types of companies, from just pure analytics or diagnostics all the way to robotic companies that are doing robotic surgery. And I think this is going to be a huge area going forward, and I hope we have more sessions on it to showcase what I think will be another whole segment of ophthalmology.
And just to reinforce that, during the industry leaders panel at the end, the closing panel, artificial intelligence was mentioned a half dozen or a dozen times. 2 or 3 years ago, it wasn't.
and Emmett, and the presenting companies during the day, anything you walked away from with just the companies looking differently than they did 4 or 5 years ago? Are they more complex? Are they more advanced?
Well, my overwhelming impression, and I think about this often as I sit there now, and this is our 10th year, is that we've seen companies develop from really premature. They were infants. You could pick Glaukos, you could pick Aerie, to now multi-billion-dollar companies that are providing really disruptive technologies, drugs or devices to treat patients. So that I always think about that as I sit there, and I have this memory of the 10-year process we've been through. It's hard to say that any one company jumped out at me as being truly disruptive and will be the next Google of ophthalmology, as an example. I can't pick one, but I mentioned many in my talk that were promising and I think could be very real and important companies.
Excellent. Well, this has been a great day, and I think we talked a bit about, well, I do want to just focus on the Masters panel. I think there was a conversation about, they're talking about issues that perhaps they weren't talking about a few years ago, and Gil, you had made a comment that perhaps it's because OIS AAO highlighted it a few years ago. You talked about progressive myopia.
Yeah, that was one thing I noticed in the panel is that I think both Alcon and J&J were talking about progressive myopia, which we did a panel, I think, a year or two ago to kind of shine a light on that, which is a new area, obviously a global epidemic. And now we've got strategics really focusing on it and really calling for more. We need more technology. We need therapeutics in the area. So I think that's really a virtuous circle because it'll help us develop technology faster to hopefully serve patients' needs much better than we could if just startup companies were looking at it. Excellent.
And let's talk about the OIS franchise just real quick. Next year we're going to have 4 OISs. This is really remarkable that this is something that started 9 years ago. This is our 10th OIS at AAO, and now we're going to have 4 of them during the year. Emma, what does that say to the OIS brand? I mean, people see this as a formula that really works and can help a lot of other specialties innovate.
Well, it's clearly, if you want to use the term formula, it's clearly a formula that has worked and resonated with the people who attend the meeting. And you've seen the breakdown. It's big companies, small companies, financial people, service providers. So it brings together all the right constituents. And we've done it at the flagship meeting here at AAO. We've done it at ASCRS and focused anterior. We've done it at ASRS and focused posteriorly. The 4th meeting, which, to be quite frank, is kind of embryonic, and we're still exploring it, is at SACO. It's an optometry meeting, and that had its genesis basically from the optometry community who said, we want to learn about innovation too, don't forget us, and from the companies who recognize them as valued and real customers in the healthcare delivery business. And so we're still kind of exploring what that means. We are going to try a meeting. We're not quite sure if it's going to be a full day or half day. We're not quite sure of the agenda or the format. We're meeting with some leaders in the optometry sector to see what their thoughts are. They sort of brought it to us. And we'll see. To date, every time we've tried it, it's worked. So there's something right about the formula. I think people get excited the same reason we do about the innovation.
You know, one of the things that makes me feel really good about the work that we've put into this over the last decade is when I wandered around today, I can't say the number of times people thanked me and us for creating this forum. They're getting together, they're hearing things that they care about, they're meeting people that they don't run across otherwise. They tend to really focus, pun intended, on coming to OIS.
Yeah, and one thing to build on that is that I think we heard at the Masters of the Industry panel that the ability to collaborate between clinical, strategic, startups, financial, it's pretty unique to ophthalmology that other fields, it's more difficult to do this. So I think we're lucky that we're in a field where there was some baseline collaboration, but now we're hopefully amplifying that and helping to bring innovations to market faster for patients.
Excellent. I was talking to someone who said if AAO is the Olympics of ophthalmology, then OIS is the opening ceremony. So we'll get some fire and some rings here next year.
It's pretty uncommon that any given constituent, whether it's a physician or an investor or a company, an executive or an employee, can really freely speak to the CEO of another company, the head of the FDA division, an investor, and consider them actually to be a friend. I speak openly with Malvina, with Wiley, with many of the CEOs, people I would have never had an opportunity to interact with at that level. So to me, that's a very special thing that the meeting has provided.
Excellent. Well, Wiley has agreed to hopefully be on the podcast next year, so I got to make
Great.
the network as well. Excellent. Well, it's a great day and a half with OISX. Thank you, gentlemen, for your hard work and your leadership.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much.
Great
Very much.
overviews.